Okay. All right, first things first. I'm not feeling so well, and I've been struggling with or against losing my voice the last day or two. So that's why we're trying to get the microphone started. But hopefully right now I'm in good enough shape where you can hear me as I get down there. And hopefully the camera can hear me. That's the first announcement. The first announcement is that we've been trying to film as much as we can during the semester in this room, you know, lectures, discussions, and so forth. And the ones we've been able to film, or maybe just capture audio, those are on YouTube already. If you just go to Eagle Business, all one word, you'll see AP Econ Lectures is a tab. I don't know that they've been placed under that playlist, that tab yet, but they're in there. So in the next week, my goal is to first of all clean that up a little bit so it's easier to find. Secondly, these notes that we have, which are on Blackboard, I need to clean up the second half of them. The first half is a lot cleaner than the second half. It's just a function of how the semester goes along and it becomes, you know, busier and busier for me. But obviously this is an important thing for us. As of now though, most of the stuff, just about all the stuff that you're going to see today, it's already on Blackboard. If you go to, you know, the Eagle Business course, you go into AP, you go into course documents, it's a PDF, okay? They're listed as notes. So that should be useful to you. And if I go through these notes and some of it looks, you know for sure we didn't say that in class or we didn't read that, don't be intimidated by it, okay? Some of this stuff was used from a resource that is a companion to the book where I just copied and pasted some of it. So in some cases it's a little more detailed than you actually need, okay? The task is not to learn new stuff. The task is just to make sure you know what you knew, whether it was a month ago or it was 6 months ago, and to know that by the time the test is here, okay? So if you're walking in today and maybe at some point I scroll down on this and you go, wait a second, I know we didn't talk about that, or that, you know, one phrasing we didn't use, don't freak out about it. But most of this stuff you'll recognize. You'll know that it's stuff that we talked about. It might look it might be in a little more formal format, okay? And that's what some people need. So hopefully that's a useful resource for you. As you can tell, I'm also recording this review session. I'll be recording the next 2 review sessions. There's 3 total, right? There's today, and there's Monday, May 2nd in here for the whole X block. And there's, I can't remember what day of the week. I think it's a Tuesday, May 10th. For that entire time, I'll be in here as well. My goal is to use these newly acquired flip cams, which have now been discontinued by their parent company, interestingly enough. The Social Studies Department just got some recently. And record what we talk about today and then put that on YouTube as well, okay? So don't feel like you have to write like crazy because first of all, the notes are going to be online if they're not already. And hopefully, as long as I can talk loud enough today, I should be full strength next week for the next review session. The camera will capture what I'm saying as well, okay? So feel free to stop me at points if you have questions, but I am going to go fast, okay? So there's going to be a limit to the number of questions. But don't feel like you shouldn't ever ask me questions. It shouldn't just be me talking for 90 minutes straight, okay? All right. Now, a couple of other general bits of information. Review. When is the test?
May 12th.
Thursday, May 12th. It's the first test of the day. You want to be here no later than 7:30. You should have already filled out all of your registration materials, of course, and your personal information that you have to do before you start the test. So all that stuff should have been done in some class at some point. If you're not sure or you haven't done it, you need to see a counselor. You need to see Mrs. Cowgill as soon as possible, okay? So that needs to be taken care of. Let's just say for the sake of argument, you had this class last semester, you're coming today, and after today you don't come back. If you don't see me the morning of the test, that's because the teacher's not really supposed to be there near the test. So it doesn't mean I don't love you. Believe me, I'm wishing you good luck. I'll be there in spirit, but I'm not going to be around to, you know, give you food or drinks or free coffee or... Actually, the cafe is going to be open that morning. So if you're one of my students, you want to come by and get free coffee, that's fine. But I'm not going to be camped outside the Hope Center, or I don't know where this exam is going to be. I'm guessing the Hope Center.
Is it the Hope Center?
I don't know. Usually it is. You're going to have to check the room assignments once they're published. Is it in here?
Yeah, it is in here.
Oh, have they already published the room assignments?
That's
I
Okay.
hate these tests. They're so small.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Is it?
Yeah.
So whatever this is, because I'm trying to find it.
This?
What's on? He said there's a PDF.
I can go and show you in a second. Okay.
Jake, you go to course documents in the AP exam, and then general resources, and then it says AP notes.
General resources. Do you see it?
Okay.
Yeah?
I'll get it out.
Can you confirm that for me?
What?
Can you confirm that that's exactly where the notes are?
But I'm general
I
resources.
watched them last night.
Oh, see anything.
I'll look in a second and I'll show it on camera because it's 4 or 5 links and I want to make sure that I have it right. So, yes.
In my like AP, my review book, there's like a lot of stuff that we haven't done in class.
You mean one of those study guides, like 5 steps to getting a 5?
Yeah.
Should I teach myself that? Or
What you need to do, study your notes first, okay? Some of that stuff goes a little bit beyond the scope of this class. Make sure if you have one of those review books that you're looking at the macroeconomic section. You're not looking at microeconomics. That's a common mistake. Most of the time when you buy these prep books, they'll have all economics together, but they usually break it into 2 sections just like your textbook. Remember your textbook in the first couple of chapters is just kind of generic, general stuff, right? And then once you get to, then you go into macro, but then there's like a micro piece, right? A long section, like from chapter 17 to chapter 30 is all micro stuff, right? If you pick up a book for the first time for this class and you go, oh my gosh, that's a ton of material, you're right, because that's micro and macro combined. Make sure you're in the right section for your review books as well. Now, once you know you're in the macro section, if there's something that's unusual, looks unfamiliar, you want me to explain it to you as the test date gets closer, come and talk to me, that'll be fine. Or mention it before or after class and show me what you're talking about. But what we've talked about in class should suffice. That should be good enough. I mean, you can see examples, I hope, in class of how we've gone through the past questions, even though that was 5 years ago, the exam for 2005. Right, nothing in there is beyond the scope of what we talked about. It's beyond the text. Okay, right? Now, the plan is to cover roughly half of the material today from the semester. Second half of the material, next review. And then the third time, have us go over past questions. Now, we've been fortunate this semester to do more of that in the actual AP class than we did last semester. We did it in both. But don't think that when you come in the third review, we're going to do exactly what we did today. Because today in class, that's what they did. They went through the 2005 exam with copies. You remember that from last semester? All right, we're going to do some of that. But we're also going to review FRQs. The multiple choice, understand it, is a bigger chunk. What chunk of the test is the multiple choice?
66%.
That's right, 2/3. 2/3 of your grade is determined by the multiple choice. How many questions on the multiple choice? 60, right?
Minute, 10 seconds per question.
A minute and 10 seconds on average is what you should allot to answer each question. Because the total amount of time for multiple choice is what? Smarty pants.
I forgot.
Oh.
70.
70 minutes. That's right, we got 70 minutes to do 60 questions. Okay. So keep that in mind, keep your timing in mind. Some of these questions don't take near a minute to do. They're like 30 seconds perhaps, maybe 20 seconds. Some of them, it's almost impossible to do in a minute unless you've seen the actual question before. So that needs to be a rough average. One of the reasons that today, what I was doing in class was doing the timers so that you were hopefully developing somewhat of an internal clock. You got to the point where you're going, you know how long a minute was. We're not in the habit of knowing how long a minute is. We kind of have a feeling internally from practice of knowing how long an hour is, maybe 90 minutes, 2 hours. We don't know how long a minute is, okay? But you have to pace yourself accordingly. They have sample multiple choice questions on the College Board site. That's one of the external links that I have. And so if you're going through those kinds of questions, or when we go through the questions that we have here on paper, what you want to do is kind of ask, maybe even time yourself, but ask yourself, check the clock, how long is it taking me to do each of these, okay? Because not answering it is not any better than not knowing the answer if you read it. You got to get each one of them stabbed. Don't leave anything blank. You hopefully remember that that's changed this year. In the past, they used to deduct a part of a correct answer every time you guessed and you were wrong. They don't do that anymore. So do not leave anything blank. Okay? Make sure everything's filled in. All right. So yeah,
I have extended time. Where is that?
you gotta have to check with Mrs. Calvin.
Okay.
Do they allow that for AP as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm not hitting with the gauge,
Oh, this guy.
Yes.
I checked where the coffee stuff was all there.
What's that?
I checked the place where the coffee stuff was.
I'll look in a minute.
Maybe it's for like our blonde thing.
All right, next. So then what is the proportion of your grade that's determined by the free response questions? That's right. Leaves a third for the freaks. How many freaks do you have? 3. How many bigs?
1 and 2 small.
1 bigs, 2 smalls.
10
Right.
minutes of planning.
You have a 10-minute mandatory planning period. Okay. So you are not allowed to start writing your answers in the first 10 minutes. That's a separate packet. Okay? They do this to help you. How many times have you been in a class where somebody, maybe you, walked up to Mr. Gideon with an FRQ and said, "Oh, do you have another one? Can I start over?" Probably not. But they do this because they know in this subject you need a few minutes to plan, sketch out what your plan of attack is. So do that. Do that. Okay? That 10 minutes should be enough time for most of the planning for how you're going to answer stuff, especially if you practice. Okay? I get your planning packet. I don't get the actual answer booklet. I get some pretty interesting ones. Like people doodling, drawing obscene things once in a long while, and I'm like, oh yeah, that fits. It's something Jamie would draw. All right? In the first 10 minutes, use that time wisely, because no matter how smart you are, you're still susceptible to making mistakes. How many times have you taken the multiple choice and said, "Mr. Gideon, can we write on this?" My answer is what?
yeah.
Yes, please do.
Yeah.
Don't do it in your head. Even if you know the answer cold, all right? Sketch it out on paper. Just like with math, right? You can make mental mistakes, especially if, like most of you are, you're one of these students that's taking multiple AP exams. When you get to Thursday of the second week, you're going to be exhausted. So don't trust your exhausted brain. Make notes. See it. Use all the senses that you have available to you. Your touch, believe it or not, this makes a difference if you have a pencil and you're doing something with it. All right? Your sight, when you see what you're doing, and then, of course, thinking. Use all those senses to try to do the best that you can and make sure that you have the correct answer. If for some reason on the multiple choice, you happen to get through all 60 questions and you have time left, what are you going to do? You're going to hand your test in? No. I know I can't be there, but you're not allowed to hand your test in early. If Ms. Cowgill's there and she's like, "Hey, anytime you guys want to hand in your test?" No, Mr. Gideon doesn't allow us to. Mr. Gideon has ordered us to go back over our questions again and check our answers. And we have agreed, as we are right now, to rat out anybody to Mr. Gideon that acts like they're finished early and they got all the answers. Everybody should at least appear to be checking their answers, going over them for the entire time. Otherwise, you will be shamed. You will be told. People are expected to come and rat each other out. Okay? Please tell me who the show-off is that's trying to show everybody how fast they are. Because that's not the best grade necessarily. Okay? Use all the time that's given. You got nothing else to do. Okay? Same thing with the FRQs. First 10 minutes, you might not want to try to cram into that 10 minutes, labeling everything and putting a legend down, right? But just making like the outline sketch of a graph, show yourself, which way you think the curve is going to move, and put some arrows to help yourself make sure you don't make a mistake, all right? Because you can't use whiteout. You can't go back and go, "Oh, I meant to shift Shiraz to the left. Can I get another?" No, you can't get another one. That's it. You're done. All right? You can scratch it out. Don't give up, all right? But you just wasted some time, so use that 10 minutes. Okay? Now, how much time do you have for the freaks? You have 50 minutes. So, once again, it's just an average, but the big is supposed to be equal to the two smallers, usually. So 25 minutes is what you should take on the big, and then 12 and a half roughly for the two smalls, right? That's the timing. 50 minutes total for the freaks, 70 minutes total for the multiple choice. Now, 50 minutes for the freaks after the 10-minute planning period. That doesn't include the 10-minute planning period.
So it's only a little over 2 hours?
Can we get a break?
What's that?
Can we get a break in between, or is it like straight? All right,
Pass your stuff in, here's your next one.
Oh, God.
I mean, 2 hours isn't, it's not easy.
You have to miss
It's like 30 minutes longer than what you would have in class, right? Think of it as a unit test, but it's longer than usual, okay? I mean, think about the unit tests I've given. You've had unit tests with me that were 60 questions, multiple choice.
That's really
All right, freaks, 2. All right, so in some cases you might feel like you have a little more time than you're used to, okay? So this shouldn't be like climbing Mount Everest. It really isn't. That's supposed to be getting through my class. What a cute laugh. All right. So you should be well prepared as long as you can remember what you know. There's somebody that said a long time ago, if I could just remember what I know already, I'd be a really smart guy.
That was me, I think.
That was you.
Actually.
All right. So, any questions about the structure of the test, when it's being given, how it works? No calculators, of course.
I know how how the SAT goes easy, medium, hard. There's no questions like that, right? They're all like.
No, I would say there are some that are relatively easy. There are some are hard, some are medium. And that's just my perspective on it. And I think people that went over the test today would agree, because some of them were pretty darn easy, some of them were tricky, and the scores kind of bear that out. 2 reviews from now, when we're going through some of the multiple choice, one of the great things that you might remember from last semester is they show how people did on each of those questions. In the beginning, primarily, in 2005, people did pretty well. You know, most of the country got, like 80% of the country got most of the questions right, or 75%. When you get to the second half of the test, it's like 22%, 16%, 65%, 50%, 70%, 23%. I don't know what the distribution is going to be, but yeah, you're going to have some hard ones and you're going to have some relatively easy ones. Yeah.
Do we need to bring a pencil, a black pen, and a blue pen?
Yep.
Black and blue?
Yeah. Black and blue are the 2 pens you're allowed to use. What my students do, because they've been trained so well, is they use the pencil and the multiple choice, of course. And then for the freak, you should draw in black, and then any movements you do, any changes, do those in blue. You just leave no doubt.
No, you did.
I mentioned it.
Definitely did.
Yeah. Okay. Now, they're not going to penalize you if you don't use blue ink. There's nothing that says, ooh, did not use blue ink, -5. All right? We just want to leave no doubt that you know what you're talking about. Same thing with the arrows. Okay? Matt, don't use 4 arrows. You don't need 4. 3. Okay? Use the abbreviations. Use abbreviations on your graphs, and then use the legend. I know some of you guys have nightmares about doing legends because you've done them so often, but there's a purpose in that. You want to abbreviate the actual graph labels so that it breathes. You have enough space for it to be easily read, okay? And remember too, if you make a mistake in the early part of a freak, does that mean the whole thing's torched?
No.
No. All right, if your frame of thinking is correct, the rest of the way you'll still get credit. All right, so let's say that the question, I can't talk over you. Let's say that the question starts out saying, what would the central bank do? And you think the central bank would buy bonds. But the answer is they would sell bonds. Well, as long as everything else that follows from selling bonds is correct, everything else will be correct. Okay? So go in there fighting. And don't just be like, oh, don't go in the tank. You gotta go in there fighting, especially if you're feeling tired because you've taken another AP exam. All right, so let's get to some material. Before we get to the material, let me see where I can find these notes. Blackboard. All right, we've got Eagle Business. Hopefully if you took this class last semester, you are now in the spring, it says Eagle Business Spring 2011. You should have been carried over into this semester. If you haven't, you need to let me know. I can get you added in one day. All right? Are you in, Jade? Does it say Eagle Business Spring 2011?
Extra credit opportunity?
No.
They have an extra credit opportunity?
Why? You're wasting time.
It says for me 2010 is for the record.
Okay. So I need to add everybody. That's why you don't see it.
Yeah.
We had some mistakes with people. Pros.
What?
Mr. Gideon.
So I got to add you in.
No, I know they have
Mr.
one.
Gideon, am I GD? Because I said that.
Shh. Now, once you see this new Blackboard class, this is where you're going to go. So write this down. I want to repeat myself. You're going to go to course documents, and you're going to go to AP Macro, course documents, AP Macro, General Resources, and then AP Notes, very first link. So after you get the AP folder, it's the first couple links. First folder, first link. You open it up, AP Notes, PDF, and there it is. That's what we're about to go through. Okay? Any questions about that?
Is that everything that's on the this? Every single
Not yet. In the next week, I'll have it more polished and finished up.
And if we study that, we should be able to get like a, we know all that like a 4 or 5 year.
Since we're about to go over that, can you put that somewhere? Or,
It's already there.
I mean, we're not in that class, so we can't access.
I'm going to add you the next day. What happens is I'm going to email Mr. Huff and say add all the students that I had first semester into this new shell, and you'll just see it instantly pop up. You'll probably have it done by tomorrow. Okay? So just check over the weekend. It should be there. All right. So let's get to this stuff.
Wait, they said that they just didn't have the AP notes, right? Because I have your class, it's just, I'm in general resources, but AP notes just doesn't come up, everything else does.
Explain to him what I just said.
No, I know, but that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because your class says 2010, 2011, right? Dylan Marshanda? Dylan. Your class on Blackboard says 2010-2011,
Yeah.
correct? Right. That's going to be changed.
Okay.
Once it says spring 2011, you'll be able to find the G.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
All right, here we go. Very quickly, the first few chapters. I'm not going to wait for you to be quiet, I'm just going to talk. Now, the beginning part of the class, obviously, a lot of it's just memorization, understanding terms. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. I want to talk about the stuff that's very detailed, that's more challenging in terms of comprehension. But I'll talk about this briefly anyway. Economics. What's economics? It's the study or the science of scarcity. There's not enough stuff to go around for us to all get what we want. There is enough stuff to go around for us to all get what we need. The question is, how do we address this situation? Different systems are set up in different ways. Right? But that's economics. Positive normative economics. Positive says, this is what happened. This is what is. Normative economics says, this is what should be. Right? You have an opinion, you're a classical theorist, or you're a Keynesian, that comes under normative economics. Micro versus macro. Micro looks at decision making by individuals or individual companies. Macro, of course, looks at the entire economy, which combines all of these people. Right? Households, businesses, the government, and so forth. And that's the major focus of this class. Goods, also known as products, are physical, tangible things that people get benefit from. They have utility or satisfaction. Bad would be the opposite, something that harms you, okay? Or has disutility. Remember at the beginning of the semester, I say that you should build a thesaurus, right? At some point. Know these terms that can be interchangeable with each other. Because I can't tell you what term is going to be used on the AP exam. Maybe they'll say tax revenues. They might not. Instead of tax revenues, they could say what? Taxes, revenues, or receipts. They say receipts, don't get freaked out. You got to study your notes. Okay? Your notes have everything that you need. You have to go back and reattach your mind. It's called scaffolding. All right? Go back to prior knowledge. It's one of the things we learn as teachers. Go back to the information that you have. Sorry, I couldn't answer it.
No, you're good. Sorry. Good job.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks. Go back to your notes first, rather than searching around in some fancy schmancy, 5 steps to getting a 5 manual. You know your notes. You know where those things are. If you don't remember right now, once you go back, it'll come flooding back. Okay? What's another example of some synonyms? Outlays, also known as expenditures, also known as government spending, right? All that stuff. Okay? Now, I'll give props to Jamie for showing off, but I want to tell you a little secret. The reason he's showing off is not just because he's worked hard, but because last X block, he sat his butt down in my room because he was preparing for a quiz on everything for the entire semester, and he rewrote everything, or at least as much as you could, right? In one place. Does he have the notes? Sure. Okay? Is he brilliant? No. And I don't say that. I don't say that as an insult, because I don't consider myself brilliant. We have people like that. Every semester we have like 2, maybe. I'm not one of those people. But I get it through repetition. And I get it through putting a pen or a pencil to paper. Okay? So, it's a good advertisement for doing that. So know your synonyms. Know your synonyms. There's a lot of them. Alright. Factors of production, there's 4 of them. You need these things to operate a business. Land, labor, capital, financial capital, and physical capital, and then entrepreneurs. They're in a separate category from labor because they have a very different kind of task. If you ever run your own business, business econ or outside of business econ, you know you have a lot more headaches, you have more creative challenges and obstacles. You also get more satisfaction if you're the entrepreneur. Economists put that in a different category. Marginal or margin means extra or additional. That's another situation with synonyms. When we try to make decisions weighing marginal benefit versus marginal cost. What do you call your second-ranked opportunity? Oops, your second-ranked choice. Opportunity cost, right? Because you can't do everything you want. You can't consume everything you want. Even if you have the money, you have to make choices. You have to give up something. When you choose to take AP Econ, you gave up the opportunity to take some other elective, right? That's one of the reasons we say there is no such thing as free, right? So we talk about these things in this class as well, particularly when you talk about production possibilities frontiers, right? Production possibilities curves, where countries, in fact, are trying to make these decisions, right? Should we produce more guns or more butter, right? Should we, as individuals, also make these decisions? And that's what Chapter 2 is about. Chapter 2 talks about production possibilities frontiers for individuals. Should I spend more of my time going to school, going to college right now, or working a job? My brother and I, when we were 18, had that choice. I chose to go to college first. He chose to go to work first, primarily. And then we flip-flopped. He makes a lot more money than I do now. No right or wrong, it's just a choice for what's best for you at that time. Okay. We also talk about externalities. An externality is some effect that somebody else experiences that's not involved in the transaction. If I have Carissa selling hair products, and I'm, let's say, hair restoration for me, and I'm like, yes, I want that, and I buy it, all right, we're the 2 parties involved in that transaction. If I use it, it actually works, and it's a positive effect, like my wife goes, wow, you look a lot better. That would be an example of an externality for her. That would be a positive one. Usually we talk about negative externalities. Like, let's say Bobby's got a cigarette store. I go in there, I buy cigarettes from him. All right, we're the ones involved in the transaction. Once I start puffing, if Michael walks by and breathes in my secondhand smoke and he gets cancer, it's a negative externality. Right? Externalities are third-party effects. Now, a lot of times we talk about theories, we try to make predictions about what's going to happen, right? But there's always one key phrase, ceteris paribus. It's not realistic. A lot of these things that economic theorists, brilliant people, predict are going to happen. It's not always a simple matter of going, well, this will lead to that, because you can't go in the lab and make that happen. So what we say is, for these theories, this will lead to that. The cause and effect are connected, ceteris paribus, assuming nothing else changes. It's not necessarily reality, but an example is, if I eat more ice cream, I'll gain weight. Ceteris paribus. That should happen, as long as nothing else changes. Because if I eat more ice cream and then I start jogging 3 miles a day and I've never jogged before, I'm not going to gain weight. You have to control all the other variables, right? So ceteris paribus applies in other situations too. You have the government saying, we're going to increase spending so that we can have more jobs out there, less unemployment, greater incomes. Well, that's going to happen, ceteris paribus, most likely, as long as nothing else counterbalances that chain reaction, right? That's what ceteris paribus is all about. Fallacy of composition is this mistaken view that what's good or true for one person or one group is true for everybody. And another group of synonyms, a theory or model for the same thing. Now, I just mentioned chapter 2, but I'm going to come back to that later when we talk about chapter 30. We talk about corruption possibilities and opportunity cost. All right, supply and demand. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Obviously, supply focuses on the sellers, demand focuses on the buyers, right? And they provide tension, right? Suppliers want to get the best price, the highest price they can possibly get away with. Buyers want to get the lowest price they can possibly get away with. But the two come together to form a market. You can't have a market unless you have both of those things. And it can be the market for everything. Like the market for hair tonic. Suppliers out there, like Carissa, vendors out there, like Mr. Gideon, right? And in any market, we want to know what the price that's going to be agreed upon at any one point in time is. What do we call that point?
Equilibrium.
Equilibrium point, correct? We also call it sometimes the market clearing price. If you're talking about a market, it's okay most of the time to just call that price. A price in that market, the equilibrium price. If you've been taught to know something more specific, you need to know that specific title. So for instance, in the money market, we don't just say the price of money, we call it a nominal interest rate. Nominal interest rate. What about the loanable funds market?
Real.
Money market is less than a year. Loanable funds market is for loans greater than a year. We call it the real interest rate. So for those two markets, in the money market, we label this differently.